on the theory of the mind as a mirror of the self.
Here is a claim. The mind is a mirror of the self. Here is the counterclaim. The mind is a mirror of nothing, because there is nothing behind it to reflect. Here is the question that neither position can answer without destroying itself. If the mind is the instrument of observation, and the self is the object of observation, and the instrument and the object are the same thing, then what exactly is being observed? And by whom?
Can I help you?
I'd like to see the man in charge.
He's in here.
I want to report a murder.
Sit down. Where was this murder committed?
San Francisco, last night.
Who was murdered?
I was.
This is not a paradox you can solve. It is a paradox you can only inhabit. The history of philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, theology, 4,000 years of the most disciplined minds in the species, has been, at its core, an attempt to inhabit this paradox without going mad. The results have been mixed. Let us be clinical about it. Let us place the theory on the table under the light and see what it is made of. Every theory is an act of desperation. People do not theorize about things they understand, only about things that will not sit still, things that refuse to be obvious, things that keep changing shape the moment the light hits them. The mind as a mirror of the self is one of these. It sounds clean. It sounds symmetrical. It has the satisfying geometry of a statement that explains itself. The mind reflects the self. The self is what the mind reflects, each term defining the other like two mirrors placed face to face, generating an infinity that neither one contains. Place your hand between those mirrors. Watch what happens. The reflections multiply. They do not converge. They fracture, repeat, recede into a corridor of copies that gets smaller the farther it goes. Each copy slightly darker, slightly less precise, until the reflection at the end of the hallway is no longer a reflection at all. It is a smudge, an impression, a memory of a shape that might once have been a face. This is the theory. This is what it does when you press on it. It does not hold, it multiplies. Begin with the terms. Clinically, the way you begin an autopsy, by naming the parts before you cut. The mind. What is it? The brain is tissue, glucose, electricity. You can hold a brain in your hands. You cannot hold a mind. The mind is what the brain does, or what happens in the brain, or what the brain produces, or what emerges from the brain, present in the combination, absent from each component, explicable in principle, miraculous in practice. Wetness from hydrogen and oxygen. Nobody has a satisfying definition. The neuroscientists describe the mechanism. The philosophers describe the experience. The two descriptions do not touch. They run parallel, like train tracks, converging in the distance, never meeting. The self. Worse. If the mind is difficult to define, the self is impossible. The self is the thing that says, I. What is the thing that says, I? Is it the body? The body changes, every cell replaced, roughly, every 7 years. You are a different body than you were at 15. Are you the same self? Is it memory? Memory is unreliable, selective, actively reconstructed every time it is accessed. You do not remember your past. You remember the last time you remembered your past. Each retrieval is a revision. The self built on memory is built on sand that rearranges itself every time you look at it. Is it continuity of consciousness? You lose consciousness every night. You did not exist subjectively for 8 hours. You came back. Or something came back. Something that remembered being you, that recognized the room, that picked up the story where it left off. Was it you? Or was it a new process, booted fresh, loading the save file of a previous process that ended in the dark? These are the actual problems. The actual, unresolved, centuries-old problems that the phrase, "the mind is a mirror of the self," attempts to bridge with a metaphor. A rope thrown across a gorge, because building the bridge is taking too long and you need to get something across before nightfall. A clinical survey of the metaphor requires acknowledging its lineage. The mirror did not begin in psychology, it began in theology. The early Christian mystics spoke of the soul as a mirror turned toward God, reflecting divine light when clean, reflecting nothing when clouded by sin. The Sufi tradition describes the heart as a polished mirror, qalb, that reflects the attributes of the divine when the ego has been scoured away. The Buddhist tradition, in its own register, complicates the metaphor entirely. Huineng, the sixth patriarch, famously responded to Shenxiu's poem about polishing the mirror of the mind by saying, "There is no mirror, there is no stand, there is nowhere for dust to alight. The mirror is the illusion, the polishing is the illusion. The self that believes it has a mirror to polish is the deepest illusion of all." 3 traditions, 3 mirrors, one that reflects God, one that reflects truth when the ego is removed, one that does not exist. The secular theory inherits all 3 of these problems without acknowledging any of them. It borrows the metaphor, strips it of its theological context, places it inside a framework that assumes, without arguing for the assumption, that there is a self to be reflected, a mind capable of reflecting it, a relationship between the two that is analogous to the relationship between a face and its image in glass. Each assumption is questionable. Together, they form the foundation of a theory that most people accept without noticing it is a theory at all. This is what makes it interesting to dissect. The most dangerous theories are the invisible ones, the ones that function as assumptions, as atmosphere, as the air you breathe without analyzing its chemical composition. The mind is a mirror of the self, is breathed by nearly everyone who has ever been told to look inward, to know yourself, to reflect. The instruction assumes the mirror. Nobody checks whether the mirror is there. Let us check. What the mirror metaphor gets right, the mind does appear to reflect. You experience an emotion. The mind registers the emotion, represents it back to you, allows you to observe it. You are angry. The mind shows you your anger. You are grieving. The mind shows you your grief. There is a doubling that occurs, a split between the experience and the awareness of the experience, the feeling and the knowing that you are feeling, the pain and the watching of the pain from some interior distance that should not exist yet does. This doubling is the mirror, the space between the self that feels and the self that watches the feeling. The gap is tiny. Sometimes it disappears entirely, in rage, in ecstasy, in moments of total absorption, when the observer and the observed collapse into a single point. Only the thing itself remains, no reflection. In ordinary consciousness, though, the gap is there. You are always slightly behind yourself, always watching, always generating a commentary on the raw data of experience, a second track running beneath the first, quieter, cooler, relentless. This is what meditation traditions call the witness, what psychotherapy calls the observing ego, what philosophy calls reflexive consciousness. The part of the mind that steps back from the content of experience, holds it up, examines it, turns it over, inspects the stitching, decides whether it fits. Except the thing being inspected is your own emotion, your own thought, your own self. The theory says, this witness is the mirror. It reflects the self back to the self. It allows you to see yourself. Without it, you would be pure reaction, stimulus, response, no gap, no choice, no awareness of awareness. You would be the dog that does not recognize itself in the mirror. The mind as mirror is what makes you human, the instrument of self-knowledge, the technology of interiority. This is elegant. It is also, if you press on it with any force, riddled with holes. 3 holes specifically, each one fatal. Hole 1. A mirror does not interpret, the mind does. A mirror shows you your face. It does not tell you that your face is ugly. It does not tell you that you look tired, that you should have slept more, that the lines around your eyes are evidence of a life you are failing to manage. A mirror reflects. It does not narrate. The mind narrates constantly. The mind takes the raw data of experience, the emotion, the sensation, the thought, wraps it in language, comparison, judgment, story. You feel sadness. The mind does not simply reflect your sadness back to you. It tells you, you are sad because you failed. You are sad because you are not where you should be. You are sad like your mother was sad, which means you are becoming your mother, which means you are trapped. The reflection is editorial, the mirror with an opinion, the mirror with an agenda, the mirror that distorts what it reflects in the act of reflecting it. If the mind is a funhouse mirror, it shows you something. The something resembles you. The resemblance is unreliable. The angles are wrong. The proportions shift depending on where you stand. What you see when you look inward is the self, as interpreted by the very apparatus that is doing the looking, which means the looking is compromised from the start, contaminated by the instrument, shaped by the lens before the image ever reaches the eye. Clinical assessment. The metaphor fails at the level of fidelity. A mirror that editorializes is not a mirror. It is a commentator, a critic, a narrator with a bias it cannot disclose because the bias is structural, woven into the instrument itself, inseparable from its operation. Hole 2. A mirror requires light. What is the light? In the theological versions of the metaphor, the light was God. The mirror of the soul reflected divine light. Remove God from the equation, as the secular version of the theory does. You are left with a mirror in a dark room. What is it reflecting? By what illumination does the mind see the self? Consciousness, presumably. Awareness. The basic, irreducible fact of being conscious. The light that allows the mind to see itself. This creates a circularity that the theory cannot escape. The mind is a mirror that reflects the self. The self is what the mind reflects. Consciousness is the light that makes the reflection possible. Consciousness is a property of the mind. The mirror provides its own light. The instrument generates the conditions of its own operation. The eye sees by its own luminosity. This is either profound or meaningless, depending on your tolerance for circularity. If you accept that consciousness is self-illuminating, that awareness is its own light source, requiring no external validation, no outside reference point, then the theory holds, yet it holds in a way that makes the mirror metaphor redundant. If consciousness is its own light, the self does not need a mirror. It is already visible, already present, already known through direct acquaintance. You know pain by having it, not by observing it in a reflection. Clinical assessment. The metaphor fails at the level of mechanism. It cannot explain its own operation without either importing a theological concept that it claims to have discarded, or collapsing into a circularity that renders it tautological. The mind mirrors the self by the light of consciousness. Consciousness is a property of the mind. The mind mirrors the self. The sentence eats its own tail. 3. The mirror changes the thing it reflects. This is the fatal one. In physics, observation alters the observed. The measurement problem, the collapse of the wave function, the persistent, philosophically devastating fact that the act of looking at a quantum system changes the system. The mind does something similar. The act of self-reflection does not passively record the self, it constructs it. When you look inward, you find a self in the process of forming, a self that is being shaped in real time by the act of observation. The self you see when you introspect did not exist before you introspected. It is a new self, called into being by the looking, a question that creates the space for its own answer. The mirror does not reflect, the mirror produces. This means the theory describes a creative process masquerading as a passive one. The mind generates the self, frame by frame, thought by thought, each act of reflection producing a slightly different self, a slightly different angle, a slightly different version of the face in the glass. None of them definitive, none of them final, all of them real in the moment of their production, all of them gone the moment the next reflection arrives. The self is rendered, continuously, provisionally, without a template. The mind is a painter that believes it is a mirror, that mistakes its own creations for discoveries, its own projections for reflections, its own fictions for facts. Clinical assessment. The metaphor fails at the level of ontology. It presupposes a pre-existing self that is reflected by the mind. The evidence suggests the opposite. The self is produced by the act of reflection. There is no face before the mirror. The mirror generates the face. This is not mirroring, this is manufacturing. Diagnosis. The theory of the mind as a mirror of the self is a metaphor for a limitation, not a mechanism. The mind mirrors the self the same way language mirrors thought. It captures something. It transmits something. It also distorts, limits, shapes what it captures by the very act of capturing it. You cannot say exactly what you think. You can only say what language allows you to say, which is always a reduction, always a translation, always a version, rather than the thing itself. The mind, turned inward, encounters the same limitation. It cannot see the self directly. It can only see the self as reflected, which is always a version, always an interpretation, always a portrait rather than a person. The theory survives as a description of constraint. The mirror does not show you what is behind it. It shows you what is in front of it, reversed, flattened into two dimensions, stripped of depth. The mind shows you a self. The self is real, like a reflection is real, present, visible, responsive to your movements. It is the thing as seen, the thing as processed, the thing as rendered by an instrument that cannot separate the signal from its own noise. The formlessness of the void provides a cushion for the falling mind. This belongs at the end of the theory, because the theory ends where all theories about the self eventually end, in a fall. You push the question far enough. What is the self? What is the mind? What is the relationship between them? The floor gives way. The definitions fail. The terms dissolve into each other. The mirror reflects the mirror reflects the mirror, each reflection emptier than the last, until what remains is the falling itself, the pure, formless, groundless descent into a question that has no bottom. The void catches you, with its absence, with the fact that the bottom does not exist, which means the fall never ends, which means you are always falling, which means, and this is the part that takes a lifetime to accept, the falling is the living, the groundlessness is the ground. The mirror with nothing behind it is the truest mirror of all, because it finally reflects what the self actually is, a process, a verb, a becoming that never arrives. Here is the final clinical note, the prognosis. The line at the bottom of the chart that the doctor writes when the tests have come back and the results are what they are. The mind does not discover the self, it renders it. Continuously, involuntarily, without template or permission. The rendering is all there is. The mirror is all there is. Behind it, behind the reflection, behind the glass, behind the silver coating that makes the reflection possible, there is nothing. There is the void. There is the formlessness. There is the cushion that catches the falling mind when it finally falls through the last layer of its own observation and discovers that the observer was the observation all along. You look in the mirror looks back. Neither of you blinks. Neither of you is real. Both of you are here. The mind does not discover the self. It renders it, frame by frame, into a darkness that it mistakes for a room. Peace, Kiyo.